Well, good morning. How's everybody today? Last night at dinner we were talking a little bit about Star Trek. And I'm 52. When I was a kid, that was my favorite show. And so right now I'm staring into the face of the computer that says self-destruct sequence will initiate in 59 minutes. I love it. It's even got the same red dots. I was standing out in the hallway this morning listening to conversations, and so I need to clear up one thing right away. All y'all have the accent, not me. Okay? That's the first thing. You know, it's good to be here. I love doing these things. I've been on a Baldrige journey my whole career. Last night somebody said they didn't know I came from aerospace before I came to the publishing industry, but McDonnell Douglas and the Boeing Company was a fantastic way to get started in training. And you know, the Lord has His plans. So I had no idea that 15 years into my career at McDonnell Douglas and Boeing that I would end up at my church's publisher, but I'm sure grateful to God that I did. You had 3 shifts of people in a manufacturing world, and you get to move to a place like Concordia Publishing House where everything is relatively day shift. What a saving that is on your life, right? Well, let's see. I've been at Concordia Publishing House for 15 years. We began the Baldrige journey almost immediately upon my arrival at CPH. But what I want to make clear to you is that we started at 0. There was nothing, no intention. Everything was managed by willpower, people. If it didn't work, we threw more people at it. Let me even tell you this little story. Is anybody here from the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, first of all? I am safe. Good. On my first day, I asked one of our chief editors, I said, well, how do you know when you're done with a book or a periodical? And he said, well, the Lord tells us when we're done. And I said, wow, where's the red phone? Because I got to have a talk about stewardship. So, I don't know how many of you have switched industries, but coming from aerospace to Christian publishing, I had a major change in all sorts of things to learn. One was keeping that respect for that communication with the Lord, but also saying, Jesus had good stewardship principles in mind when He gave us a brain, right, to operate. Old Testament and New Testament examples of that. People were set in place to manage things, manage people, right? Elders, what have you. Well, Concordia Publishing House, that's the building in St. Louis. And I just love putting those little banners at the bottom. The Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, the Missouri Quality Award, Center of Excellence in our customer service, and also Best Christian Workplace, as evaluated by our employees. But I just love it. And the day that we won the Baldrige Award, it was a wonderful day. Just wonderful day. Here's a little feeling of that day when I announced it to our employees in an all-hands meeting. Yesterday, at 9:13 on November 21st, I also received a telephone call. It was from the Assistant Secretary of Commerce of the United States of America, Mrs. Rebecca Blank. Mrs. Blank informed me that Concordia Publishing House won the 2011. It still gets me a little bit. It was a great day to celebrate. It represented about 12 years of a journey at CPH. It meant more than all the Baldrige work I did at McDonnell Douglas for some reason. I think it's the passion for the mission that we have at CPH. At McDonnell Douglas, we always said we were in deterrence as a business because we were in defense contracting. And I still think I'm in deterrence as a business, saving lost souls, keeping them away from Satan, if you will. with the resources we produce. We're a self-supporting, not-for-profit. We're about 145 years old, but we like to say we're, young. We are the publishing arm of the LCMS, but all denominations use our materials. We have about 300,000 customers that are regular customers. Have you ever tried to manage your way through 300,000 customers, all with differing ideas of what you should be doing? It's been interesting. You could say, a lot of places have many more customers than that, but when you have regular customers, it's both a blessing and a feedback loop. Constant, When I left aerospace, I thought I was technically trained. I came to the publishing industry, and I can't figure it out. None of my engineering background helps. Why doesn't the word phonetic, why isn't it spelled the way it sounds? So I'm in publishing trying to answer these types of questions now, and it's just not the same. We serve all these customers, churches, directors of Christian ed, pastors, teachers, lay people, and it's a blessing to be doing that. Our products span the wide spectrum of publishing. There really isn't anything we don't publish. Periodicals, books, curriculum, academic and professional. And today, we've been heavily investing in technology. Everything heading forward seems to be aimed at devices like this. How many of you have something that you read on an iPad or iPhone or a Droid? Most of you, right? Now that's good and bad. Books I still love. My son and my daughter has, I think, somewhere near 700 books on their devices and nothing on their bookshelf. But they'll talk about these books that they have on their devices. So talk about an industry in change, an industry filled with innovation. Our workforce is made up of pastors and teachers and lawyers and publishers and all sorts of folks. The average tenure is about 12 years. I was telling folks last night, we have people at the 45-year mark on a regular basis. And prior to my coming to CPH, we had people at the 50-year mark on a regular basis, retiring from CPH. So it seemed as if once you started there, you could stay there forever. Times are changing though, aren't they? Our infrastructure, we've got 6 floors, about 400,000 square feet. We installed a state-of-the-art enterprise resource planning system and pick-to-light distribution center. Now, a lot of folks don't know what that is. That's okay, but suffice it to say in manufacturing, those two things were required for this company. They didn't exist prior to 2004. I viewed them as a precursor, though, necessary for the criteria to work. The closed-loop data system, ERP, allowed us to go get good data from anywhere in the company: finance, supplier management, production control, operations, etc. One set of data, the same set of data, no matter where you looked at it. Prior to that, marketing would tell me, oh, we sold this many. Operations would say, well, this many went out the door, and that was a different number. Unusual. Yeah, very unusual. So, I don't know, here's a couple of overused charts for you, but that first big arrow was CPH 15 years ago. All the little arrows inside were all of the departments going their own way, doing their own thing. Very, very uncomfortable position, especially when you know that the goal is the second arrow. So I'm here to report to you that we are actually operating according to the second arrow now, moving the same direction with the same mindset, the same mission, same vision in mind. There's our logo. I used this logo to convince the folks at CPH that this journey was necessary. It's a real simple sort of thing to describe. You have a book, you have a half sphere that looks like the world, and you have a flame. Well, the first thing is the book. Obviously, the Bible is central to what we make sure we get out to the globe in various ways through curriculum and books and resources for kids. Arch books are known the world over. Our academic books are known the world over. So we focus centrally on that as our mission. The second thing is that the world is the goal, not just the United States, not just North America. And when we do it, we have three things in mind, and that's really the focus of that flame. First of all, we're guided by the Holy Spirit. Second of all, this represents to me the lamp of learning. How many of you wear a college ring or a class ring of some sort? Have you seen the lamp of learning on the side? So an academic press like us, like any publisher, the lamp of learning. But finally, it represents the big business acumen, which is fire in the belly. Not indigestion. Fire in the belly. Fire for the mission. Staying on theme, staying on focus. Not being deterred from that vision, from that mission. Now, I started off with this very simple chart. And, you know, I told folks at CPH for years, because I couldn't get aerospace out of my head, this ain't rocket science. It's just keeping it simple, focusing on what matters. So we started with simple key performance indicators like cost, cycle time, quality, and customer, at that time, satisfaction. And then engagement. And then loyalty. What an evolution, not a revolution. I briefed the people, the board of directors of CPH first, and then the people at CPH, 30 at a time, on the history of quality systems post-World War II. And my purpose in doing that was to provide a little background, but aim us in the direction of the criteria. But I certainly didn't bring up the criteria or start launching the criteria notepads around the company. Simply focused on what we needed to do to improve the business. So we started with this. Notice our mission is swirling around in the middle. Mission was critical. We had to stay focused on being the best publisher for the church possible. Now, some of my people took it a little too crazy, and they went and had tattoos of the diamond chart put onto their body, and they gave me a bunch of pictures of this to tell me we got the message. And I said, great, now go have those removed. But we did keep the mission in mind. We constantly focus on the mission. So all sorts of ways to remind people about the mission. Through goalkeepers, I had some sign standards put down every hallway that said things like, well, you can see it, striving to be the premier publisher, working towards continuous improvement, empowered to do the right thing, and they keep going down the hallway. So as you walk down the hallway, talk about a great reminder. The very last one in every hall, though, is a little different than they were at McDonnell Douglas. The very last one in our hallways say, all to the glory of God. I'm here speaking today, but this ain't my gig. I didn't do it. The people of Concordia Publishing House did it. I'm so very proud of them. I can't tell you. Now, about the time I came to CPH, we had about 3 sets of consultants crawling all over the company. And they were all arguing about which set of consultants' stuff was the best. And at that moment in time, I may have been considering going back into aerospace until the board chairman came to me and said, what do you think? And I said, well, I think we can keep it simple. A simple little waterfall process that starts at the start with the church, comes to Concordia, focuses on our vision, our values, our competencies, etc., and comes down to voice of the customer, voice of the employee, and then helps us in 3 planning horizons, obviously. Simply put, longer term, medium term, and today. Now, it's not rocket science, right? Notice the 4 bottom lines at the bottom there on that chart. I love it because they all started with a P. Isn't that great? I love it. The 4 bottom lines, not 3, 4. The very first one had to be first, by the way. Purpose, our mission, our focus had to be first. People had to come right after that because they're the ones focused on the mission. Planet, because we burn so many trees publishing what we do still and yet today. About 50% of our business is still print and the other 50% is digital. And then last, the nasty word called profit. Now, if you're in a secular business, those might be somewhat reversed. I'm not sure. I remember how important profit was in aerospace. But notice I qualify that word profit with the word that we all recognize, sustainability only. If I were to stick it to the customers for the sheer purpose of being able to do that, to increase profit, I would be looked down upon. So while we have some profit to sustain ourselves into the future now, it is not all about the almighty dollar. Okay? Now, we created a simple strategic planning process in this overused gear chart that sort of depicts it. But everything starts with collecting and analyzing data, and then the other steps kind of rotate around it all year long. We end with what I think is interesting, which is sort of the budget, the business plan, and what have you. We used to start with a budget. Anybody remember doing that? Start with the budget and then plan to meet that budget, instead of starting with the plan and seeing what it comes out in terms of the budget. We've always been pleasantly surprised. Funny how if you get the cart before the horse, how that works out. Two-way communication, I cannot overemphasize. Everybody thinks they communicate two ways, but unless you're receiving regular feedback to help you move forward, to make the feedback become feed forward, you're not gaining anything. It's all one way. So we do a number of things. I have a building speaker system which I aggravate people with all day. This is Bruce Kintz calling the CPH family. Yes, I used to be in radio. No. We have all hands meetings, weekly flow downs that every week when we have staff meeting, my staff records under 8 headings. And then those 8 headings and all of the sub pieces from our staff meeting are flowed down to everybody the next day, without exception. That was a double mark from Baldrige, by the way. They thought that was excellent in terms of it being so regular. I have a 24/7 sort of mindset, so my phone is on 24/7 for customers, for my students, for employees, for really anybody. And yes, typically when I say that, somebody in the audience rings the phone just to test it. So far I'm safe. But they did it at the Baldrige award ceremony, which I thought was interesting, so I answered it. And I made them think it was Sister Mary Jean Ryan. Yeah. Sister, I'm sorry, I'm busy right now. Yeah, it's great. Our customer focus, this lady in the lower left-hand corner there, Charlie is her name. One time a customer called and they said, it's Friday, and I know you won't be able to ship this to me, but I need more Vacation Bible School materials. And he was a couple of states away. Unbeknownst to me, Charlie drove those materials to that pastor. And I didn't find out about it until the next week. How's that for customer service? She didn't ask for anything. She didn't tell anybody. She just did it. That was fantastic. I mentioned technology. We have several apps out there, and we have a research and development group at CPH that I started some 6 years ago. And it has been a wonderful, I guess you'd say, genesis for us. We didn't have research and development. It was just keep publishing. Why would we need R&D at a Christian publisher? But we do. We did. We're using it. They're creating all sorts of software products for us. It's a fantastic little group. It's very modern. We call it the Innovation Technologies Group, not Information Technologies anymore. And they have the Star Trek area at CPH. It is very cool. You'll have to stop by and see it, see our Innovation Center. We're a learning organization. It was very important to make sure we had a proper set of training, if you will, and education on all sorts of subjects. It took us a while to find the right person, though. Somebody who's not talking down. Somebody who at the end of a training or education session didn't give you an exam that you felt pressured, but somehow you absorbed the material on things like plan, do, check, act. Why are performance appraisals important? How to conduct appraisals. How to do all sorts of things relative to the Baldrige. How to create key performance indicators, on and on. Yep. benchmarked our process design from my previous industry where I had used it frequently. This process design, I think, is fairly standard with the swimming lanes that show what department is handling what piece of what process. Our current process design has red, yellow, green stoplight indicators attached to the boxes. And when I log on to our processes, I can see the current real-time condition of those processes, red, yellow, or green. You can guess which one means what. Yep. Now, the simple continuous improvement process, plan, do, check, act, I decided to keep it real simple. I remember 8-step improvement processes, 10-step improvement processes, 12-step improvement processes. But when you aggregated certain of those together, it seemed as if they always came down to the least common denominator of plan, do, check, and act. So we implemented a very simple process at CPH. And we said, let's do these things. And then let's repeat it. Let's keep repeating this process until we have so many cycles of learning that we don't recognize the original process. And we've done that. We've had thousands of cycles of learning at CPH on all matters, on everything. Even the plan, do, check, act process itself. Yeah, I remember the first time I read the criteria, and it said to me, do you have a process improvement process? And it made my brain hurt, you know. Similar to site visit questions from all y'all. When you say, how do you do that? As opposed to what do you do? How do you do it? Right? It's good stuff. Difference in the answers means quite a bit. Our systems are now automated, but when we first started, I had paper key performance indicators. And we would switch out the paper in these little plastic holders on the wall. And I thought, oh, that's cool. Just like I had in aerospace, you know. But then we sought to automate that data with our ERP system, little by little by little, until eventually now we have the red light, green light, yellow light indicators on these, and you can see the snapshot and how fortuitous it was that day that they were all green. But we do have days where there's certain things that go into the yellow or red, but it's real-time data. And this dashboard pops up on everyone's computer first thing. We have other data down at the bottom that they can refer to, including the condition of our 4 bottom lines, real time. The goal there is, obviously, if it turns yellow or red, that's an in-process indicator you can do something about, so you could still make your ultimate goal by the end of the week, month, quarter, etc. Now this is another thing that I benchmarked from Sister Mary Jean Ryan, her goalkeeper. Have you seen her goalkeeper? We were about halfway through the process, and I loved this so much I called her up on the phone, and she almost chewed me out for not just stealing it. Why are you asking me? Take it. You know, and if you know her real well, it was just quite fun. Yeah, of course, take it. That's what we're supposed to be doing. You know, I said, yes, ma'am. So I did. So in this particular case, we put the corporate goals on the left, and we put a department level goal in the middle, and then individual goals that support also in waterfall style. So simple, so useful, so easy that our employees love it. Talk about traceability from the individual goal level back to the corporate goals. When somebody comes around and says, how does your work support the corporate level goals? Oh, that's easy, and they pull out their goalkeeper. Wonderful, very simple. Senior leader support. Okay, so I was already in the know a little bit. I came from aerospace. I was familiar with the criteria. Somewhere in the journey, I announced that the criteria existed, and I said we could shoot for this. Now, at that time, though, there wasn't any not-for-profit ability to send an application in, so I'm not sure what year that would have been. 04, 03, somewhere in there, something like that. But I fully intended to send an app anyway and cause some heartburn. Hey, we got an app from a not-for-profit. Don't they know we don't have? I mean, just to have them read the report and potentially say, you know, may have caused some discussion. But thankfully, by the time we were ready, there was a not-for-profit category. These are all the things that we had to do, overcoming resistance. There's one of the groups of 30 that I'm briefing a long time ago, so that had to be like 2003. We were going through, little by little, convincing people, had repetitive sessions, had follow-ups, had Q&A sessions, had town halls. Two-way communication is big. Now, I will say, though, that as much of a criteria nut as I am, I kept telling people at CPH, hey, this isn't about, going to 1.1.1a subsection B paragraph C. It says do the following, and then doing that. It's doing what makes sense for your business, documenting the processes that you use, starting into place the plan, do, check, act necessary for continuous improvement, and then, changing the book, showing people the cycles of learning, not letting the criteria sort of define what you do specific to your business. Now, it's amazing when you do that, there's very good alignment there. So I never let the criteria sort of be the end-all, be-all. Does that make sense? Are you going to stone me? No? Okay. It's okay. It's 8-something. And okay, you guys are all right. More coffee. More coffee. Now, Jerry Puglisi, this lady's picture over here, was the very best customer service director that CPH has ever had. And she had all sorts of marketing and customer experience. And one day when it was time and I was looking for my first examiner, I called her in my office. I had coffee. I had a little plate of cookies. And I had all this set up right there across from me, and she looked at this stuff. And she goes, uh-oh. And I said, Jerry, have I got an opportunity for you? How would you like to learn a little something about the Malcolm Baldrige criteria? And she said, cool, who's that? She started from 0, learned the criteria, went on site visits, and then became a judge for the Missouri Quality Program. She led us all the way through the win of the Missouri Quality Award in 2009. I'll never forget that day. She was flat out crying when we got the phone call. A great day. You have to pick your first examiner. We picked a good one. You have to find a great application to mimic and get those criteria books. The more, the better. Put one in everybody's hand. Even if folks say, I don't understand it, over time, they're very useful. Very useful. Now, benchmarks came, sort of this evolution. Do you remember when it was a cool thing to put a goal line on a chart? Oh, here's my goal, right? Well, then that kind of fell by the wayside, and then it became benchmarks, right? We've got to find industry benchmarks. Well, they're out there. Don't give up on that. We use Baldrige winners now as benchmarks on things. There's enough of them that we can do it. I remember way back at McDonnell Douglas, it was kind of hard to find a benchmark because nobody would share any data. I thought that was kind of interesting. Today we have sort of a wider distribution of data. Segmenting is what got us from the MQA to the Baldrige. That was the big OFI. Opportunity for improvement that we had from winning the MQA to the Baldrige. We had some segmentation, but not nearly enough. When you're able to jump to segmentation and look at individual departments, customer groupings, etc., and discern between them what works and what doesn't work and compare that data along with your benchmarks, sometimes you have internal benchmarks that you can use, right? And that segmentation is very useful. It's a big discriminator between levels. In our particular case, you can look at one thing, compare another to it. We did have some internal benchmarks at CPH. And once you raise up, internal things, the external ones seem to improve as well. Now, it was important for me to do this for my board, but even more important for the examiners. Okay, we had probably 10 CEOs from secular industry. And they came and they, talked with me first. And I said, now keep in mind, I came from secular industry, and now I'm here at not-for-profit. And this is what I've noticed. Real simply put, shareholder value is everything. Whereas in not-for-profit world, the profit bottom line is at the end. So I had to sort of give them this, okay, so we shouldn't be looking for profit. Okay? It should be about improvement and sustainability. So when they heard that, I was glad I did it, type thing. Now, mission critical, sometimes you manage them a little bit more carefully rather than jettisoning them. If you have a poor performing unit at Boeing, it might get canned, right? But in a not-for-profit, you tend to manage it a little bit more closely because it's part of your critical mission. And then finally, as a sort of a summary of the first line, one is financial motivation and the other one is more mission motivated. So I was glad I did that for the examiners. Now, after we had gone through a journey over several years, I told you I hadn't really mentioned the Baldrige criteria to the folks at CPH. In fact, it sort of came all at once. Now, how many of you remember this movie? Let me see a show of hands. All right, enough that you might appreciate this. Do you know where I'm going with this? Have you heard this before? But I actually did this at work. I had not talked about the criteria. I hadn't talked about anything specific, that there were 7 categories. That we could not throw out the history of quality systems in the U.S. for something new. That we didn't have to. In the old days, I went from Six Sigma at Motorola. I was supposed to be the company focal point for that, and the bosses couldn't figure out how Six Sigma could be used in the office. So they looked down on me. Then I went to statistical process control and said, did you know you can use that in the plant and you can use it in the office? And they said, that's stupid. Why would we do that? We're already the best. And then we read the Hammer book on process-based management. Remember that book? Anybody remember that book? When I read it, shortly thereafter, I had to say, I'm not worthy. That guy wrote a book that changed all of our lives, process-based management. Other things like TQMS, remember that? In aerospace, we thought it meant time to quit and move to Seattle. It was because we were McDonnell Douglas. Okay, sorry. All of these initiatives were great, and they still are great. And they have a particular purpose in mind in the continuous improvement realm. We don't have to throw them out. We can put our arms around all of them and make use of them in their proper environment. With me? So, on a day at CPH, they said, oh, this is great, Bruce, but what is the deal here? I mean, we're doing a little bit of SPC down here in the manufacturing area. We've documented our processes. That's process-based management. We've got desktop procedures that are excellent now. New employees come in. They get an application. They get this. They get that. And they're more trained than they've ever been. But what's the deal? Why are we doing all this stuff? And this movie comes to mind. Remember the issue here? The young man had been asking Miyagi if there was a way that he could be trained to learn karate, remember? And so what did Miyagi have him do? Well, I want you to sand the deck. And he had him on his hands and knees sanding the deck. And he started off like this. He said, no, stop doing that. Sand the deck like this and sand the deck like that. And the kid's like, well, what's the purpose in that? Then he said, I want you to paint my fence. So he was slapping some paint, and he said, no, I want you to paint like this. Lift the brush like this, and then on the downstroke like that. And he thought it was stupid, but he did it. And then he had him wax his fleet of cars, remember? The famous line, wax on, wax off. Okay? Now what was he doing? He was strengthening this kid. These actions, repetitive, strengthen certain muscles. And on a day, if you remember the video, the movie, the kid got mad at Miyagi, blew up in his face. You haven't taught me karate. I don't know any karate. We haven't done any karate, but I've washed and waxed all your cars, painted your fence, and sanded your deck. I'm tired of you. And Miyagi said, show me, paint the fence. And Danielson said, what? That's stupid. Show me. He said, no, show me, paint the fence. And he grabbed his arm, and he showed him the moves in karate. Remember that? And he said, show me, sand the deck. And he's going like this. He said, no, show me those moves the way I taught you those moves. And so at the same time, Miyagi threw a few punches, and those moves parried those punches until he was able to figure out what? That he had learned something. Started off fundamental, kept it simple, strengthened himself, and he learned something, and he's never been the same since. When I showed this and talked to the folks at CPH about it, you should have seen all the light bulbs come on. It was a great day. Love this movie. Great example in terms of how we did it. This was just our journey. It's not the journey. We had a different journey at McDonnell Douglas. You all have a different journey that you're on. But keeping it simple for us was the recipe at a Christian, not-for-profit publishing house, publishing arm of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. What a great day it was. I also remember being pressured at McDonnell Douglas with a stopwatch. Bosses would say, okay, by June, you will have all the processes documented at McDonnell Douglas. Oh, that's great. No stress, no pressure there, you know. So if you had people that were fanned out in the organization, you might have a chance of success if they all use the same format. But you know how that works, right? Varying degrees of success. So the journey and eventually putting your arms around everything and giving it a structure. When I mentioned the criteria finally and passed out the books, people were like, okay, this kind of makes sense now. So there's a category called leadership. Love it. The waterfall is really strategic planning. Our great world-class customer service that we've had and we've improved really can be outlined this way. Wow. You know, HR is supposed to be an advocate for people. I always thought IT was sort of a pain, but they're really sort of a support infrastructure for the company. And when we get it right, we really get it right. Interesting. Processes, results. This makes sense. It was a great day at CPH. Now, we have a Baldrige display area on the 3rd floor next to the cafeteria. And the Baldrige Award sits there. The reverse side of that coin that has, right now you can just see the side that has the ribbon. The other side has the presidential seal. And I told folks last April when I went to the podium, I had a speech prepared, and I sort of turned it over and didn't use the speech. But you know, this is an $18,000 piece of crystal, and that really doesn't matter. Of course, I told him I'll take it. You know, and it weighs like 40 pounds, by the way. It's like, wow. It wasn't about the award, though. And it still isn't. It was about the journey that the people at CPH went on for 10 or 12 years. It was about the work that they did on behalf of their mission. It was about the passion that they have in their hearts to get the Word of God out to the globe, a dying world. This mission is the most important mission as far as I'm concerned. So the Baldrige Award recognizes that even at a national level, we can be seen as one of the best companies in the U.S. We are willing to share any data that we have with anybody that wants it. We have a website, baldrige@cph.org, that is manned to do just that. We share benchmarks. We share anything at all, processes. Steal it. I mean, benchmark it, like Sister Mary Jean Ryan says all the time. Just use it. That's what we're supposed to do. Why reinvent the wheel? Let's learn from each other. right?
I actually sent CPH my resume the minute I got out of college.
Working here at CPH gives me the opportunity to reach many, many lives in a way that I never dreamed of.
What we make here actually ends up in a real person's hands and makes a real difference in their lives.
And we're real people here too, and so we love to interface and relate to our customers, real people to real people, dealing with our friends and all those whom we can serve with the gospel.
Or you even see your children reading from something that you worked on to their children. It's a very powerful thing.
Not a lot of people have that opportunity to be blessed with that type of job.
Just from one central location, we can put out so many products and try and touch so many lives.
That is an awesome thing to feel.
So I've got a proud group of people at Concordia Publishing House. There's the website if you need us. I'm available 24/7 if you need me. Okay, whatever data you might need. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.